Ethan was an ordinary young man, the type of person who blended into the background wherever he went. He worked a simple job, came home to a small apartment, and often spent his evenings with a small group of friends at a late-night cafe. Life felt quiet, safe, and maybe a little boring. He often dreamed about adventure but never believed anything like that could ever happen to him. To Ethan, the world was predictably, till one small joke changed everything. It happened on a cool autumn evening. The cafe was half empty, the air carrying the smell of coffee and cinnamon pastries. Ethan sat at the corner table with his two friends, laughing over silly stories. The topic had turned, as it often did, to relationships. His friends teased him about being single, about how he never had the courage to talk to women. Ethan laughed along, though deep inside, he sometimes wished for something or someone that would make his life exciting in the middle of the laughter. Ethan leaned back in his chair, raised his cup, and joked, "Maybe I should just get a vampire wife. At least she'd notice me." His words were meant to be nothing more than a joke, something to get his friends laughing. And they did laugh loud, careless laughter that echoed in the quiet cafe. Ethan chuckled too, shaking his head at the ridiculous thought. A vampire wife. Impossible, but outside the cafe, unseen by human eyes, someone was listening. A pair of sharp ears caught his words, and a pair of crimson eyes glowed faintly in the dark. To most people, it was only a joke. But to her, it was something much more serious, a choice, a claim. A binding dot. Ethan had no idea that the world he thought was safe and ordinary was filled with creatures of shadow. Vampires had lived hidden for centuries, ruling their own kingdoms in secret. And in their old traditions, words carried power. When a human spoke a desire with full intent, even ingest it could awaken an ancient law. Ethan, without knowing it, had just spoken the words that would tie his life to a destiny darker and more dangerous than he could imagine. The night passed quietly. Ethan returned home, still laughing at his own silly joke. He unlocked his apartment door, threw his jacket on the chair, and turned on the TV. To him, everything seemed normal. Yet, as he walked to the window to close the blinds, he paused. He felt something, an odd sense, like he was being watched. The street outside looked empty, the pale moon shining on the quiet road. But in the shadows across the street, something shifted. Ethan's heart beat faster for no reason he could explain. He shook his head. "I'm imagining things," he whispered to himself. He pulled the blinds shut and tried to focus on the TV. But that night, as he tried to sleep, he could not shake the feeling. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind against the glass made him uneasy. He felt as if invisible eyes were following him. At around midnight, Ethan woke suddenly. A whisper had pulled him out of sleep. He sat up in bed, straining his ears. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, faint but clear, he heard it again. His name, Ethan. His blood ran cold. The voice was soft, almost musical, but it carried a strange power. He turned his head slowly toward the window. His blinds were still closed, but through the thin fabric, he saw something, a shadow, taller than any person, standing perfectly still. He froze. The whisper came again, closer this time, as if the voice was inside his head. "Ethan." Gathering his courage, he pulled the blinds open in one quick motion. His breath caught in his throat. Outside, standing on the sidewalk under the pale glow of the streetlight, was a woman. She was tall, her hair long and black as midnight, her skin pale as ivory. Her eyes glowed a deep crimson that seemed to burn through the glass. She wore strange armor, dark and gleaming, as if she had stepped out of some ancient battlefield. And she was staring directly at him. Ethan stumbled backward, his heart pounding. His mind screamed to run, to hide, to do anything. But he could not look away. The woman raised her hand slowly, her lips curving into the faintest smile. Her voice drifted through the glass like smoke. "You spoke the words. and now I have come. Ethan shook his head in disbelief. This had to be a dream, some strange nightmare. He rubbed his eyes, hoping she would vanish. But when he looked again, she was still there, more real than anything he had ever seen. The woman's eyes narrowed. Her voice was calm, but carried a command that froze his blood. "You are mine now." And with those words, Ethan's ordinary life ended. Ethan did not sleep that night. Even after the woman vanished into the shadows, her crimson eyes haunted him. He kept the lights on, sitting in the corner of his room with his phone in hand, ready to call the police. But what would he say? "Excuse me, officer, a vampire is stalking me." No one would believe him. He hardly believed it himself. Yet deep in his chest, fear whispered that what he saw was real. The next morning, he stumbled into work, looking pale and tired. His friends teased him about staying up late, but Ethan could barely hear them. His mind replayed the vision over and over. Who was she? Why did she speak as if she knew him? And what did she mean by "you are mine now"? That evening, as the sun sank behind the city buildings, Ethan walked home, glancing over his shoulder every few minutes. The streets grew darker, quieter, until only the sound of his footsteps echoed in the air. When he reached his apartment door, he felt it again, that strange pressure, like unseen eyes pressing on his back. He froze, his keys trembling in his hand. "Ethan," he spun around. She was there. The same woman from the night before. But now, she stood closer, just a few steps away, her form bathed in silver moonlight. She was even more striking than he remembered. Her dark armor clung to her like liquid shadow, engraved with runes that glowed faintly red. A long black cloak moved behind her as if alive. And her eyes, those burning crimson eyes, held him prisoner. Ethan's throat went dry. Who are you?" The woman tilted her head as if the question amused her. When she spoke, her voice was low and steady. "Carrying an ancient weight, I am Celine of the Blood Court. I am a warbride." Ethan blinked, confused. "A what?" She took a step closer, her presence filling the narrow hallway like a storm. "Your words called me. You spoke the bond. By ancient law, I am bound to you. I am your bride, and you are my chosen." Ethan let out a nervous laugh, hoping this was some elaborate prank. "Look, I don't know what kind of role-playing game this is, but I didn't call anyone. I was joking with my friends. It wasn't serious." Her expression hardened, her eyes narrowing. "In my world, words are not toys. A human who speaks desire for a warbride awakens a contract older than your nation's, older than your kind's memory. You wished for a vampire wife, and so. You have one?" Ethan's heart hammered in his chest. This couldn't be real. Vampires weren't real. Brides bound by law and blood weren't real. But Celine reached out her hand, and with effortless strength, she lifted his neighbor's motorcycle with one arm. The metal frame groaned as if it were paper in her grip. Ethan's jaw dropped. "Believe now?" she asked, her lips curling into a cold smile. He stumbled backward, nearly tripping over his own doorstep. "Why me? I didn't mean it. I don't want this." Selena's expression softened slightly, but her voice was still iron. "Choice does not matter. The bond is sealed. You are mine. And now my enemies will come for you." The words sank into Ethan like ice water. Enemies. He hadn't even asked for her, and now killers might be after him. Celine's gaze swept the street, her crimson eyes scanning the shadows. "They already know. I smell them in the air. The rival clans will not allow this bond to exist. They will try to tear you from me." Ethan's stomach turned. This was insane. He was just a normal guy, working a normal job, making silly jokes with friends. He never wanted any of this. But as he looked at Celine, standing like a queen of darkness under the moonlight, he realized there was no escape. She stepped closer again, her cold fingers brushing against his wrist. The touch sent a shiver through him, both fear and something else he couldn't name. Her voice dropped to a whisper, but every syllable struck deep. Do not run. Do not hide. You are my chosen, Ethan, and I will protect what is mine. Before he could respond, the sound of glass shattering echoed from the alley. Ethan's head snapped toward the noise. Selena's eyes narrowed, her hand tightening on his arm. They are here. The air grew heavy, charged with menace. From the darkness, shapes began to move, figures with glowing eyes and twisted grins. Their bodies unnaturally thin, their claws scraping against brick walls. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Monsters. Real monsters. Celine's cloak flared as she stepped in front of him, her voice ringing with power. Stay behind me. Ethan's world shattered in that moment. The joke that had started in laughter had turned into blood and terror. He was no longer just Ethan, the ordinary young man. He was bound to a war bride, hunted by creatures of the night, and the war had only just begun. The alley was filled with shadows. Ethan clung to the wall as Celine stepped forward, her cloak moving like black fire around her. The creatures that emerged from the darkness were not human. Their skin was gray and stretched tight, their mouths filled with sharp teeth, and their eyes glowed like burning coals. They hissed and snarled, their bodies twitching with hunger. Ethan's stomach twisted. He wanted to scream, to run, but his legs refused to move. Celine's voice rang out like steel cutting through the night. Back, carrion. This one is mine. The creatures only laughed, a sound that made Ethan's skin crawl. One of them pointed at him with a clawed hand. The human doesn't belong to you, Warbride. Give him to us, and we might let you live. Ethan's blood ran cold. They wanted him. Why? He wasn't special. He was just Ethan, the ordinary guy who worked a 9-to-5 job and made dumb jokes with friends. But here he was, standing at the center of something terrifying, something ancient. Celine moved with sudden speed. In one fluid motion, she drew a blade from beneath her cloak. It glowed faintly red, like it had been dipped in blood and fire. Come then, she hissed. Test my vow. The monsters leaped, but Celine was faster. She cut through the first one in a blur of motion, her blade striking with deadly precision. Another lunge, and she spun, driving the sword straight through its chest. Ethan's eyes widened as the creature dissolved into black smoke, leaving nothing behind. The alley filled with shrieks as Celine fought. Her movements graceful but brutal, each strike carrying centuries of skill. Ethan could barely follow her speed. One moment she was in front of him, the next she was across the alley, slashing another enemy down. Her eyes burned with crimson light, her lips pulled back in a snarl. She was beautiful, but terrifying, like watching a storm take human form. Ethan covered his ears, his body trembling. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. Yet the smell of ash and blood was sharp in the air, and the fear was too heavy to be a dream. Finally, the last creature hissed and retreated, its body melting into smoke as it vanished into the night. Celine lowered her blade, her chest rising and falling slowly. She didn't look tired. She looked alive, as if battle was the very thing that gave her strength. She turned to Ethan. Are you hurt? Ethan shook his head, still pressed against the wall. What? What were those things? Her eyes softened, but her voice stayed cold. They were scouts from the rival clans. They want you because you are bound to me. If they kill you, the bond breaks. If they take you, they can use you against me. Ethan swallowed hard. I don't understand. Why me? I didn't mean anything by that joke. I don't want to be part of this. Celine stepped closer, her crimson eyes glowing faintly. You think it is a joke, but it is not. Your words carried power. The law of my people is ancient. When a human calls for a war bride, even in jest, the contract is sealed. You are now part of our world. A world of shadows, blood, and war. Ethan shook his head, his voice cracking. This is insane. I'm not a warrior. I'm nobody. I just wanted a normal life. Celine's gaze did not waver. There is no going back. Once the bond is made, it cannot be undone. You are mine, and I will not let you die. Her words should have comforted him, but instead they filled him with dread. What did it mean to belong to someone like her? What did it mean to be tied to a vampire war? Celine sheathed her blade and motioned for him to follow. Come, there is much you must know. They walked through the silent streets until they reached an abandoned church on the edge of town. The windows were broken, the stone walls cracked with age, but inside the air was heavy with something ancient. Celine lit a torch, and the flickering light revealed carvings along the wall, symbols of blood. Wings and crowns. This, she said, her voice echoing softly, is where I tell you the truth. Ethan's eyes darted from one carving to another. The images showed battles between humans and vampires, endless wars under the moonlight. How long? How long have your people been here? He whispered, long before your kind built cities. Long before your kind thought you ruled this world, Celine replied. We were hidden, but never gone. And now, war brews once more. The clans fight for control, and a war bride is the key to power. By binding myself to you, I gain strength. But that strength also paints a target on your back. Ethan's voice trembled. So I'm just a weapon to you? Some kind of tool. Celine's crimson eyes softened for the first time. You are more than that. You are my chosen. You give me power, yes, but I also swore to protect you with my life. That is the vow of a war bride. Ethan stared at her, torn between fear and something else, something he didn't want to admit. She was dangerous, terrifying, but when she spoke, there was no lie in her voice. She would fight for him. She already had. Before he could respond, a loud thud echoed through the church. Ethan froze. Celine's hand went to her blade instantly, her eyes flashing red. On the door, burned into the wood, was a strange mark. A circle with jagged lines cutting through it, glowing faintly in the dark. Ethan felt his chest tightened. What? What is that? He whispered. Celine's face grew grim. It is the mark of the Crimson Fang, the strongest of the enemy clans. They know who you are now. Ethan's knees weakened. His joke had brought him into a war he didn't understand. And now the most dangerous clan of all had marked him. And this was only the beginning. Asterisk. The night air inside the abandoned church grew heavier after Celine revealed the mark. Ethan stared at the glowing symbol carved into the wooden door, his stomach twisting. The jagged circle seemed alive, pulsing faintly as if it breathed. He wanted to believe it was just paint, some trick of light, but deep inside, he knew better. Celine touched the mark with her fingertips. Her crimson eyes darkened. The Crimson Fang has declared war. Ethan's chest tightened. War on me. But I'm just a normal guy. Why would they care about me? Celine turned to face him, her expression unreadable. Because you are no longer normal. You are my chosen, and that makes you a target. If they break you, they weaken me. If they take you, they gain power. In this war, you are not a bystander. You are the prize. Her words cut deep, heavier than the silence that followed. Ethan shook his head, backing away. No, I don't want this. I didn't ask for any of this. Celine's gaze sharpened. Neither did I, but fate does not ask for permission. Before Ethan could answer, the church shook. A low rumble rolled through the cracked stone walls, followed by the sound of shattering glass. The torches flickered violently. Ethan's heart raced. What was that? He whispered. Selena's sword was already in her hand, glowing faint red in the dim light. Her voice was calm but firm. They found us. The next moment, the front doors of the church burst open. Splinters of wood flew across the floor. Shadows poured inside, writhing like smoke before shaping into bodies. Dozens of figures crawled out of the darkness, their eyes glowing red, their claws scratching the stone. Ethan stumbled back, his breath caught in his throat. "There's too many, stay behind me," Selene ordered, stepping forward. The creatures shrieked and charged. Selene moved like lightning. Her blade flashed, cutting through the first wave with deadly grace. Each strike dissolved enemies into clouds of ash and smoke, but for every one she cut down, more emerged. The church echoed with hisses, shrieks, and the clash of steel. Ethan crouched low, covering his head as debris rained down. His entire body shook. He had never seen violence like this, not even in movies. This was raw, brutal, and terrifyingly real. Selene fought like a queen of death. But even she seemed strained against the sheer number of attackers. One of the creatures broke through and lunged at Ethan. Its claws reached for his face, its breath foul and hot. Ethan screamed, throwing up his arms only for Selene to appear in a blur, slicing the monster in half before it touched him. Her crimson eyes blazed as she glared at him. "Do not stray from me." Ethan nodded frantically, his chest heaving. His fear mixed with something else, a realization. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for him. Every move she made, every strike she delivered, was to shield him from death. But then, something unexpected happened. One of the creatures, instead of attacking, stopped in the middle of the chaos. Its eyes locked on Ethan. A wicked grin spread across its face. And then, it spoke. "She is lying to you, human." Ethan froze, his ears ringing. The creature's voice was guttural, but the words were clear. He glanced at Selene, but she was too busy fighting off 3 attackers at once. The creature crept closer, its grin widening. "You are not her chosen. You are her pawn. She will use you until you are empty, just like the others before you." "Others?" Ethan's blood went cold. What do you mean?" The creature's laughter was sharp and cruel. "Ask her. Ask the Warbride how many humans she has claimed before you, and how many are still alive." Before Ethan could reply, Selene's blade cut the creature down, silencing it in a burst of smoke. She didn't even glance at Ethan as she turned to fight the next wave. But the words stuck in his mind like poison. "Others before me, and how many are still alive?" The battle raged on, but Ethan could no longer focus. His fear of the monsters was now mixed with doubt. What if the creature was telling the truth? What if Selene wasn't protecting him out of loyalty, but simply because he was useful?
Minutes passed like hours until finally the last enemy was destroyed. The church fell silent, the air thick with smoke and ash. Selene stood tall, her blade dripping with black ichor that vanished before it touched the ground. She looked untouched, but Ethan could see the faint tension in her shoulders. "It is done," she said simply, sliding her sword back into its sheath. Ethan didn't move. His chest rose and fell rapidly, his mind racing with the creature's words. He wanted to ask her, to demand the truth, but when her glowing eyes turned toward him, the words died in his throat. Selene stepped closer, her expression unreadable. "You are safe." For now, Ethan nodded slowly, but inside, nothing felt safe. Not anymore. Because the enemy had left him with more than fear. They had left him with doubt. The church was silent after the battle, but Ethan's thoughts were loud, screaming inside his head. Celine's blade had destroyed the last of the creatures. Yet the monster's words clung to him like a curse. She is lying to you. There were others before you. Ethan tried to calm himself, but the doubt grew with every breath. Celine stood at the far end of the room, cleaning her blade with steady hands. She looked calm, powerful, untouchable. But now Ethan wondered what was she hiding behind those crimson eyes. She turned to him suddenly, and he nearly jumped. "You need rest," she said, her voice firm. "The Crimson Fang will not stop. But for tonight, you are safe here, safe." The word sounded hollow. Ethan nodded weakly, forcing himself to lie down on one of the wooden benches. He closed his eyes, but sleep never came. Every creak of the old church, every flicker of the torchlight, reminded him of the monster's voice. "She will use you until you are empty." Hours passed. When he opened his eyes again, Celine was gone. The torch still burned faintly, but the church felt colder. Panic filled him for a moment, until he noticed a door at the back, half open. Light glowed from within. Quietly, Ethan rose from the bench and walked toward it. His hands trembled, but curiosity pushed him forward. He stepped inside and froze. The room was filled with shelves of scrolls and books, their pages worn with age. Strange symbols glowed faintly across the walls, like veins of fire trapped in stone. On the table lay a bundle of parchment. Ethan leaned closer, squinting at the words. His blood ran cold. The scrolls told stories of humans, men, and women who had once been bound to war brides. They were called Blood Chosen. Each name was followed by the same ending, dead. Some were slain by enemies, others drained of life, their bodies left as husks. Ethan's chest tightened. There were others before him. The monster's words had been true. Curiosity is a dangerous thing. Ethan spun around. Celine stood in the doorway, her crimson eyes glowing faintly. She looked different in that moment, not just powerful, but dangerous. I was just, he stammered. You were reading what was not meant for you. Her voice was calm, but there was a sharp edge beneath it. Ethan's fear turned into anger. Why didn't you tell me? You said I was your chosen, that this bond was special. But it's happened before, hasn't it? And all of them died. Celine stepped into the room, her cloak brushing the stone floor. For a long moment, she didn't answer. Then she spoke softly. Yes, there were others. The truth hit him like a blade. He backed away, shaking his head. So it's true. I'm just another pawn in your war. Another human to use until I'm dead. Her eyes narrowed. Is that what you think of me? What else am I supposed to think? Ethan snapped. That I'm different. That I'll survive when all the others didn't. Give me one reason to believe you. Silence filled the room. Celine's gaze burned into him, but there was no anger now. Only something deeper, something he couldn't name. Finally, she spoke. They were not like you. Ethan frowned. What does that mean? Celine stepped closer, her voice low. The others were weak. They could not endure the bond. But you, there is something in your blood. I felt it the moment you spoke the words. You are stronger, different. You are the key to ending this war. Her words shook him, but the doubt still lingered. And if I refuse? What if I don't want to be your key? Her expression hardened again. Refuse, and you die. The Crimson Fang will tear you apart. With me, you have a chance. Alone, you are nothing. Ethan's breath quickened. He hated the way she said it, hated that she might be right. He wanted to believe he still had a choice, but the truth was clear. He was trapped. He turned away, gripping the edge of the table. You should have told me the truth from the start. Celine's voice softened, almost a whisper. If I had, would you have stayed? Ethan froze. He didn't answer, because deep down, he knew the truth. He would have run. Celine stepped closer, her hand brushing his shoulder. The touch was gentle, almost human. I will not lie to you again, but you must trust me. Without trust, the bond will break, and both of us will fall. Ethan stood still, torn between fear and the strange pull he felt whenever she touched him. He wanted to trust her, but the images of the dead humans on the scrolls burned in his mind. Before he could reply, a sudden noise echoed from outside, a sharp, unnatural screech that shook the windows. Ethan's heart stopped. Celine's eyes flared crimson, and her blade appeared in her hand. They have found us again. The torchlight flickered, casting long shadows across the scrolls. Ethan's doubts would have to wait, because the war was not giving him time to decide. Asterisk, the screech outside the church windows shook Ethan to his core. The sound wasn't human. It was sharp, hollow, and carried through the night like a call to war. Celine moved first, her crimson eyes glowing brighter as she strode toward the door. Blade ready. Ethan hesitated, his legs heavy as stone. Stay behind me, Celine ordered, her voice sharp as steel. But Ethan couldn't move. His mind still echoed with the scrolls he had read, the list of humans who came before him all dead. He wanted to run, to escape this nightmare, but something held him in place. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the strange pull of the bond he didn't fully understand. The church doors rattled, dust falling from the cracked ceiling. Then silence. Ethan's breath came quick and shallow. He expected another wave of creatures to break through, but nothing came. Instead, the night grew unnaturally still. Celine's hand tightened on her sword. They are waiting. Testing our strength, Ethan whispered. Why me? Why do they want me? For the first time, Celine turned fully to him, her eyes locking onto his. There was no cruelty in her gaze, now only truth. Because your blood is different. You are not like the others. You are the blood key. Ethan's chest tightened. Blood key? What does that even mean? Celine lowered her sword slightly, her cloak whispering against the floor as she moved closer. The clans of my kind have fought for centuries. Endless wars, endless death. The blood key is the one human who can end it. A human whose blood carries both life and destruction. That human is you. Ethan shook his head, his voice trembling. That doesn't make sense. I'm not special. I'm just Ethan. I live in a tiny apartment. I work a boring job. I can't even keep a plant alive, and now you're telling me my blood can stop a war? Celine's lips curved into the faintest smile, but her voice remained serious. You are more than you believe. I felt it the moment I drank your presence through the bond. The others were weak. They burned out, but you shine like fire. Ethan took a step back, panic twisting inside him. So that's why you chose me? Not because of me, but because of what I am. Just a weapon? Celine's eyes softened. At first, yes, but now. She paused, her voice lowering. Now it is different. I swore to protect you because of what you are, but I want to protect you because of who you are. Ethan stared at her, unsure if he could believe those words. But before he could reply, the church walls trembled again, cracks splitting through the stone. A voice echoed from outside, low and cruel. Give us the boy, Warbride, or we burn your temple to ashes. Celine raised her sword. They are here for the bond. Ethan's hand shook. You can fight them, right? Like before? Celine's gaze stayed fixed on the door. Not this time. There are too many. Alone, I cannot hold them back. If you want to live, you must choose. Ethan's heart pounded. Choose what? Her crimson eyes snapped to him. The bond is not complete. I am bound to you, but you are not bound to me. If you drink my blood, the bond will seal. You will gain my strength, my speed, my sight. You will no longer be prey. You will be more than human. Ethan froze. Her words felt like fire in his ears. Drink her blood? Become something else? He shook his head violently. No, that's insane. I don't want to be like you. Celine stepped closer, her voice urgent now. Ethan, listen to me. If you stay human, you will die tonight. They will tear you apart. If you take my blood, you will live. And together, we can end this war. Her hand reached for his, her touch cold but steady. I cannot make this choice for you. You must decide. Ethan's mind raced. Images flashed his quiet life, his friends at the cafe, the silly joke that had started all of this. And then the scrolls, the dead humans before him, their names etched in history. Would he join them? Or could he be different? The church doors cracked, claws ripping through the wood. Screeches filled the night. Time was running out. Ethan's chest heaved. He looked into Celine's glowing eyes. For the first time, He saw something there he hadn't noticed before. Not just power, not just hunger, but hope. His voice was barely a whisper. If I drink, what happens to me?
Selene's lips curved into a shadowed smile. You will no longer be just Ethan. You will be mine. And you will be unstoppable. The doors exploded inward, shadows flooding the church. Ethan's fear snapped into something else: desperation. He grabbed Selene's arm, his voice shaking but firm. Do it. Selene's eyes flared crimson as she pulled him close. With one swift motion, she bit into her wrist, dark blood welling up. She pressed it to his lips. Ethan hesitated for only a second. Then, with the roar of monsters filling the air, he drank. The taste was fire and ice, burning through his throat, flooding his veins. His body convulsed, his vision blurring. He gasped, clutching his chest as his heart pounded like a drum. Selene's voice echoed in his ear. It is done. The bond is sealed. And as the monsters poured into the church, Ethan opened his eyes. They glowed with light.*. The taste of Selene's blood burned through Ethan like fire racing through dry wood. His body shook violently, every nerve screaming, every heartbeat louder than thunder. He clutched his chest, falling to his knees as the world tilted and spun. The monsters surged into the church, screeching and clawing. But Selene stood over him, blade flashing as she cut them down. Then, everything changed. Ethan's vision sharpened. The world was no longer dim and shadowed. It was alive with color and detail. He could see the veins of cracks in the stone walls, the ash falling in the air, even the faint pulse of life inside the creatures that swarmed toward him. His hearing expanded, too. He could make out every flap of leathery wings, every hiss, even the steady rhythm of Selene's breathing as she fought. Power rushed into his veins, raw and unstoppable. His fear, which had clung to him since that first night, melted away, replaced by something fiercer. Rage, strength, hunger. Selene's voice cut through the chaos. Ethan, rise. He stood. No, he launched to his feet. His body felt light, yet filled with endless energy. When one of the creatures lunged, his instincts took over. Ethan's hand shot forward, faster than he thought possible, and he grabbed the monster by the throat. With one squeeze, bones cracked, and the creature dissolved into smoke. Ethan stumbled back, staring at his hand in shock. He had just killed something that terrified him hours ago. Without even trying, a grin spread across the face of another attacker as it rushed him. But this time, Ethan didn't retreat. He moved. Faster than the creature could follow, he slammed into it, sending it crashing into a stone pillar. The entire church shook from the impact. Selene cut down 2 more enemies, her crimson eyes glowing with pride. Yes, the bond awakens in you. The battle raged. Monsters poured in like a flood, but Ethan and Selene fought back as one. She moved with grace and precision, her blade singing through the air. He moved with raw force, his new strength turning every strike into devastation. Together, they became a storm of steel and fire, tearing through the enemy ranks. But then, the ground trembled. The creatures stopped their assault, parting as a new figure entered the church. He was taller than the others, his armor black as obsidian, his eyes glowing brighter than flames. His voice rolled like thunder. "Warbride," he said, his fangs glinting. "So this is your human?" The famous blood key. Selena's grip tightened on her sword. "Crimson Fang," she hissed. The vampire lord stepped forward, his presence filling the church with dread. He looked at Ethan, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "Interesting. I see why you want him. But he is wasted on you." His eyes burned into Ethan's. "Come with me, boy. I can give you more than she ever could. Power without chains. Eternity without servitude." Ethan's chest heaved. For a moment, he felt the weight of those words. More power, freedom, no bond. No ancient rules tying him to Celine. But when he looked at her fighting, bleeding, never once abandoning him, he knew his choice. He stepped forward, his new strength buzzing in his veins. I'm not going with you. The Lord's smile faded. Then you will die with her. The final battle began. Celine clashed with the Vampire Lord, their blades striking with enough force to shatter stone. Sparks and blood filled the air as they fought, each strike heavier than the last. Meanwhile, the remaining creatures rushed Ethan. He met them head-on, moving with speed he never imagined. His fists shattered bone, his kicks sent enemies flying across the room. The power inside him grew with every strike, as if the bond was feeding his rage. The Vampire Lord roared, knocking Celine back. She crashed against the wall, blood on her lips, but her eyes never wavered. Ethan, together. Ethan felt it then, the bond. A pull between them, like two flames merging into one fire. He reached for it, and suddenly their strength united. His veins glowed with light, hers with darkness, and together they surged forward. Celine struck high, Ethan struck low. Their combined attack pierced through the Vampire Lord's defenses. Celine's blade cut across his chest while Ethan's glowing hand slammed into his heart. A scream shook the church as the Lord burst into fire and ash, his power collapsing into nothing. Silence fell. The remaining creatures scattered, fleeing into the night. Ethan stood in the ruins of the church, his chest heaving, his hands trembling with power. He looked at Celine. Her crimson eyes softened, and for the first time, she smiled. Not the cold smile of a warrior, but something warmer. You did it, she whispered. Ethan swallowed hard. We did it. But Selena's gaze darkened again. She stepped closer, her voice dropping low. This was only one clan. Now that the bond is complete, all the vampire courts will know your name. They will come for you. For us, Ethan's heart pounded. He had survived the first battle, but his joke had thrown him into a war much bigger than he ever imagined. He looked at Celine, her armor cracked, her eyes glowing with both power and something like trust. He realized there was no going back. His life as Ethan, the ordinary human, was gone. Now he was bound to a warbride, marked by enemies and carrying power that could decide the fate of two worlds. Ethan clenched his fists, the light still glowing faintly in his veins. Then let them come. Selena's smile returned, sharper this time. Yes, let them come. And in the silence of the ruined church, with ash still drifting in the air, Ethan knew one truth. The war had only just begun.